This week on Viewpoints.
Throw away that old script and trust ourselves to improvise and relate in that moment. We'll get a much better result.
Why improv isn't as scary as it's stacked up to be. Then,
we had rain in January in the high Arctic, which is not something that happened at all when William Barents, my navigator explorer, was there more than 400 years ago.
4 centuries ago, explorers risked everything to reach the Arctic. Today, it's not the cold that poses a real danger. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints. You may know funny man Steve Carell from The Office, but before his A-list career in Hollywood, you probably don't know that he studied and performed improv for nearly a decade at the Second City Training Center in Chicago. Second City is notorious for shaping many famous stars over the years, like John Belushi, Chris Farley, Amy Sedaris, Tina Fey, and Stephen Colbert. Each mastered the art of improvisation, or improv, a comedic live theater that's made up on the spot. This means no one skit or dialogue is ever exactly the same. For most people, the idea of exposing themselves to this kind of vulnerability feels unnerving. There are no lines to memorize, no script to lean on, just you, a stage, and an audience waiting to see what happens next. The unpredictability of it all is what makes many shy away, but for comedian Max Dickins, that same unpredictability is what draws him to the stage.
Things come out of you when you're improvising that are not filtered through the intellect. So you're genuinely surprised by what you say when you're on stage. And it's a feeling of, oh gosh, I had no idea I knew that word. I had no idea I have that opinion. I had no idea that I can play this character. It's a feeling of accessing part of yourself that is unreachable off stage.
Dickins is a London-based comedian, improvisation expert, and author of Improvise, Use the Secrets of Improv to Achieve Extraordinary Results at Work. He believes that improv is a valuable skill that everyone should try to cultivate.
It's just pure connection with somebody else, because there is no script. Obviously, it's just you and them in the moment with an audience in front of you. You've only got each other, and you have to rely on each other, and through them, through how they react in unexpected ways, you get to access part of yourself, ideas, skills that you didn't know you had. And so that is the real thrill of it, is finding parts of you that you don't normally get to express. And it's a real freedom up there, I think.
Everyone, to some extent, naturally improvises throughout an average day. Anytime you think on your feet, lead a conversation, adjust to an evolving situation, or quickly answer an unexpected question, you're practicing the art of improv. One skill that Dickins wanted to build through improv? His confidence. Go back 10 years, and he was a touring stand-up comedian who wanted to feel more confident in all areas of his life.
I was on the stand-up comedy circuit in the UK at the time, because I was a professional for 7 or 8 years, and I wanted to get into improv to learn some skills to get better at crowd work, basically, to get better off the cuff so I could host clubs and things like that and improve my career in that point of view. But the second reason was I felt that when I was on stage doing these gigs, I was in control in a way, because I had my material, I was the only one in the spotlight, I had a microphone in my hand, I was in control, and I was confident that 20 minutes every night I went up there. But then off stage, I didn't feel I had that same level of confidence. And so what I wanted was to find that confidence in some way, and improv was my way into that.
Improv comedy is really one of a kind. A skit can lead down an unexpected path depending on the group dynamic. But what makes a show stand apart from all the others? Most people would assume that in order to be good at improv, you have to be extremely funny, witty, extroverted, and charismatic. However, Dickins says the most fundamental starting element is not what you'd think.
They listen incredibly well, and I call it listening with intent. So it's intent to actually show up and really listen, because often we're not listening really well. How often when you listen are you stuck in your head thinking about what you're going to say next? You're not listening, you're waiting to respond. So it's intending to listen, and then with the intent of using what you hear. So improvisers talk about the willingness to be changed. That's what listening is. I'm changed by the other person. So it all starts with listening as the fundamental basis. A lot of people think improv's about talking and being funny and clever and being really quick, and maybe there's an element of that, but you cannot respond to the other person, you cannot respond to the moment without listening really well.
Another important part of improv is learning how to share the spotlight, because it's really a team effort. Think of it like a work meeting. You've got different personalities, different roles, and sometimes the best thing you can do isn't to take charge, but to step back and make space for others. Being aware of this dynamic not only helps the group work better together, but also leaves a great impression on the people around you. The art form also offers a welcome break from the usual to-dos of daily life. There's something about slipping into a character that isn't you, shaped by your quirks and your instincts, that makes the experience feel fun, personal, and surprising. It's in those unscripted moments with others that new ideas, connections, and perspectives can take shape.
Performance. People think of performance and they think, oh, that's for the stage. But I think we perform in life a lot as well. We do play characters. It's not just a metaphor like Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. But I'm just thinking about how often we respond to others in character that we're stuck in roles. And what improv's great at is giving you awareness of what your triggers are, what your buttons are, and your go-to habits in response to these buttons, so that you have more choice of playing different characters, different roles in different contexts. Because like you put yourself, that character is not suitable for every context. But even in regular relationships, maybe it's with one person at work, or, I don't know, if you're having a tough time with your boyfriend, girlfriend, it's because we get trapped in these ways of being, trapped in roles we play with that person, and it gets us into trouble. And we can throw away that old script and trust ourselves to improvise and relate in that moment. We'll get a much better result.
Improv's impact has grown far beyond the stage. Today, many Fortune 500 companies continue to use improv for team-building workshops and brainstorming sessions. It's also a way for employees to build soft skills and have fun by trying something new. Dickins, a founding member of London's Hoopla Improv Company, talks about these collaborations.
If you think what communication is, in a nutshell, it's an improvisational act. It's completely unscripted. You don't know what I'm going to say, or my feelings, my thoughts, my knowledge around a thing, and vice versa. I don't know what you feel, think, or know around a thing, and we're feeling our way, and it's like a dance, right? It's going to be give and take. We're going to stumble. We can make that part of the dance. There's probably going to be moments of choreography, but there's going to be moments where we just follow what's there in the moment. That's what real connection is. That's what great conversations are. And you can have that with people you manage. You can have that with your clients and your customers. You can have that with your spouse and your friends. And improv is like yoga for your soft skills. So if yoga makes your body more flexible, then improv makes your communication more agile.
And this kind of adaptive listening isn't just useful in a boardroom. It's something anyone in any field can practice. Whether it's at home with family, out with friends, or in everyday conversations with strangers, the same skills that can make improv click on stage can make your interactions feel more genuine and connected. To find out more about Max Dickins and the art of improvisation, check out his book, Improvise. Use the secrets of improv to achieve extraordinary results at work. You can also find more resources and links to this topic and archives of all our past shows at viewpointsradio.org. To get more behind the scenes and support our show, follow us at Viewpoints Radio on Instagram, X, and Facebook. This segment was written by our executive producer, Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price.
Coming up, did you know that today the Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the rest of the planet? When Viewpoints returns. The Arctic is no longer just a mysterious destination for documentaries and photos. Today, it's a barometer for the planet's health. According to NASA and the National Snow and Ice Data Center, since 1979, the Arctic has lost ice at nearly 4.7% per decade. And a recent study in the journal Nature Communications, Earth and Environment projects that the first ice-free summer day in the Arctic could happen before 2030. Now, imagine traveling to that vanishing frontier in 1594 when Dutch explorer William Barents set sail into the unknown. For him and his crew, getting stranded in the icy, frozen tundra meant almost certain death. Barents was starting the first of what would be 3 expeditions to explore the Arctic region in hopes of finding a northeast passage. If successful, the discovery would shorten the lengthy trip from Europe to Asia that forced traders to sail all the way around Africa. While Barents never found this passage, what did return were stories of the Arctic that still live on today.
They were sailing at that point off of any known map in existence. They didn't know if they were going to try to head north of these, what they thought were probably islands, but they also thought it might be part of a polar continent. At this point, it was thought there might be a giant continent sitting at the top of the planet. And then when they did get stranded, they knew that no one would know where to find them. No one would have any idea where to go or where to look for them or where they might be.
That's Andrea Pitzer, a journalist and the author of Icebound, Shipwrecked at the Edge of the World. She says that what Barents and his crew did back in the late 1500s is the equivalent of traveling to Mars today. There was no concept of what they would find or who they would encounter while there. Pitzer herself traveled to the Arctic 3 times to get a better sense of the landscape.
First time I went, my big goal was to learn what it would be like in polar night. Since they were stuck there over the winter when there's no sunlight at all, literally the sun doesn't come up, I wanted to get a feel, at least for a few days, of what that would be like. So I went on a dog sledding expedition on Svalbard, which is halfway between Norway and the North Pole. And I went up, and it was pretty amazing to go away from the coast, away from any lights, when the only lights that were there were if there was light reflecting, a little bit of moonlight maybe off the snow. Other than that, we had to wear headlamps in order to be able to see where we were going and for the dogs to have some sense of where they were going.
This darkness and isolation can take quite a toll. Imagine several days without sunlight or seeing or speaking to another living thing. For an entire winter during the 3rd expedition, Barents and his crew fought for their lives as they waited for temperatures to rise and their ship to thaw out and break free from the frozen ice.
The ship was still frozen in June, and so they finally gave up on trying to get the ship out of the ice, and they just decided to come home in their small boats. So these are not large boats at all. They spruced them up a little bit to make them a little sturdier for the voyage, a little more appropriate for these men to try to come in as a group. But they ended up having to sail more than 1,000 miles in open boats on an open sea before they were able to find another ship that could then take them in. Many of them did eventually get back to Amsterdam.
While much of the crew survived, Barents succumbed to the Arctic winter and died on the voyage back.
It was pretty incredible because they came into harbor and immediately word spread that they had returned because they had been gone so long at this point. They had set out well over a year before, that it had just been assumed that they were sort of dead and rotten, that they had, vanished from the face of the earth. And then to show up, so many of them alive, was extraordinary.
In 2019, the ship that Pitzer was traveling on broke down, and the engine couldn't be repaired.
We had to use just sails. We didn't have any motor at all available to us. It wasn't possible to fix it while we were at sea. And so we had to come back only using the power of the wind, which is pretty incredible when the wind is not going in your direction. And that happened to be the case with us several times. So there's a thing you do called tacking into the wind, where you make very little forward progress and you're sort of zigzagging side to side, and the boat is tilted at like a 45-degree angle, and it makes for some wild seafaring. And the Barents Sea itself, which is now named after him, which is that sea between Nova Zembla and Murmansk that we had to cross, the Barents Sea has been known as the devil's dance floor for its choppiness because it has warm water and cool water coming from opposite directions and mixing. So it was quite an adventure to sail that, just as Barents would have sailed it. But for me, it really helped me imagine, what it had been like for them back then.
But back then, the Arctic looked much different. Today, massive ice sheets are melting at an alarming rate, leading to an unsustainable landscape for wildlife and rising sea levels across the world. A study in the journal The Cryosphere shows that global ice melt has accelerated by 57% since the 1990s, leaping from about 800 billion tons per year back then to over 1.2 trillion tons today. Meanwhile, NASA and European Space Agency data synthesized by the IMBY project show that Greenland alone is shedding around 234 billion tons of ice per year, a staggering 7-fold increase compared to the 1990s. During Pitzer's third voyage to the Arctic, she traveled to the same islands that Barents and his crew had once been stuck on.
The glaciers had retreated so far on the maps of glaciers that we had that it was extraordinary. The maps just were no longer accurate at all. And in fact, we saw an island there that we were some of the first people to see because glaciers had retreated so far that they had revealed an island that no one knew until recently even existed. And when we sailed into the place where their ship got frozen into the ice, we were only there a week earlier in August than they had been back in 1596. They had gotten completely frozen in, but today in that harbor in August, there's no ice at all. There's just not any ice there.
Even in recent memory, huge changes have already taken place. A few years back, almost half of Canada's last fully intact ice shelf, the Milne ice shelf in the northernmost part of the country, collapsed into the sea. This broken piece is larger than the island of Manhattan. Protecting this region isn't just about saving a remote, icy wilderness. It's about safeguarding the future of the planet. At today's pace of glacial melt, the fate of several cities and countries worldwide hangs in the balance. The U.S. Geological Survey notes that if every glacier and ice cap were to disappear, global sea levels could rise by more than 200 feet, which is enough to submerge every coastal city and island on Earth. While the Arctic has transformed dramatically since Barents first sailed its waters, climate scientists caution that the greatest mistake would be for us to sit back and accept its decline as inevitable.
And while we still have a chance to intervene and save a lot of what's left there, I'd like to encourage people to sort of see the differences between then and now and to think about what we can do to protect some of the things that Barents was the first to record the existence of.
To find out more about this topic and our guest, Andrea Pitzer, visit viewpointsradio.org. This segment originally aired in February 2021 and was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
This is Viewpoints Explained. I'm Ebony McMorris. For so many people, losing a tooth means many trips to the dentist, potential pain, trouble eating, reduced confidence, and other issues. But what if your body could regrow a new tooth? This possibility is now being tested in human patients in Japan. The trial medicine targets a protein called USAG1, which normally signals the body to shut down tooth development. By blocking it, researchers hope to wake dormant tooth buds and trigger a new tooth to grow. Early animal studies found that a single antibody dose could produce a whole tooth in mice and show promise in ferrets, which have dental patterns similar to humans. The first trial, which began last September, includes 30 adult men ages 30 to 64, each missing at least one tooth. Over 11 months, these men received the drug intravenously, while researchers tracked safety and effectiveness. The next step in the clinical trial plans to test children ages 2 to 7 who are born with a developmental condition that causes multiple missing teeth. A Japanese startup is the driver behind the lengthy trial. If all goes well, the company hopes to bring a treatment to market by the year 2030. If all goes well, the company hopes to bring a treatment to market by the year 2030. This could be a viable option for about 7% of adults worldwide who are suffering from tooth loss. In people over 60, this number jumps to 1 in 4. For now, it's too soon to know if this dental treatment will be a lasting fix, but if the trial succeeds, it could mark a turning point in how we think about aging, repair, and what our bodies are capable of. That's Viewpoints Explained for this week. More in a moment.
Welcome to Culture Crash, where we examine what's new and old in entertainment. Since kicking off in earnest with Superman, the new Warner Bros. DC Comics DCU universe is off and running. This interpretation of DC is being masterminded by James Gunn, and the continuity started with this summer's Superman flick is now continuing into Peacemaker Season 2. Written and occasionally directed by Gunn himself, Peacemaker is an HBO Max original series starring John Cena, who reprises his role from Gunn's film The Suicide Squad. In contrast to the family-friendly PG-13 tone of Superman, Peacemaker is very much a TVMA show made for adults. The show follows the titular character and a secret government black ops team tasked with protecting humanity from otherworldly threats. Hair metal music, ultra-violent superhero hijinks, and a bevy of foul language abound in what turns out to be a feel-good band of misfits found family superhero show. What's especially interesting about Season 2 of the show is that Season 1 occurred in the previous DCEU. To pivot the show into our new DCU universe, Season 2 had to make a brief correction to its canon in the previously on at the beginning of its first episode. Instead of the old Snyderverse Justice League showing up for a cameo, Season 2 of Peacemaker switched them out for the new DCU Justice Gang. And just like that, Peacemaker is now in the continuity of the Superman movie. Though I don't think anything that happens in Peacemaker is ultimately going to matter too much for the theater-made film entries, fans of the DCU who are game for a lowbrow sensibility action comedy with a lot of heart will find plenty of universe details to revel in. But the show is also worth watching on its own merits. Cena turns in a hilarious and surprisingly moving at times performance as Peacemaker, and he's surrounded by a tremendously fun cast that includes Jennifer Holland, Danielle Brooks, and Freddie Stroma. Peacemaker is now streaming on HBO Max. I'm Evan Rook.
That's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.